Hey, we are live. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Pop Culture Philosophers. I am Rockin Robbie Billups, and with me, I have comic Uno herself, Kat Calamia. How are you doing, Kat?
I am doing well. Thank you for having me. I am really looking forward to this show. We're already talking some pre-show stuff, so we know it's going to be a fun conversation.
Oh yes, absolutely. But when I go live, I just could die out. I just yeah, what's up? Anyway, but everybody, tonight we're talking to Kat because she's got a Kickstarter going on right now. I believe you have 5 days left or something?
5 days. I'm counting it down. Wednesday, 11 a.m. For some reason we're ending at 11 a.m. It's done. I'm so excited to kind of see that final number. 30 days. It's just okay, I just need to see, because now we're funded. So we've been funded for a while. Yeah. So it's just okay, what's that final number going to be?
Absolutely. So first of all, congratulations on funding
Thank you.
The 7th issue of Like Father, Like Daughter, which I have read. And Kat, well done. I really liked it. There's twists, there's surprises, there's great character work. It has the feel of Jeff Johns' Stars and Stripes, which inspired the Stargirl show, which was way better than I ever hoped it could be. And in my opinion, and it has a little bit of a Buffy flair, but definitely superhero. It's not mocking or copying any of that stuff. It just kind of has that approach. I really liked it. And I actually thought Wayne Brown is the artist, right?
Yeah.
I think his artwork gets stronger issue to issue. And I think issue 7 or issue 6, which was the last one I read, was the best yet. So tell us a little bit about the story, the concept, how you came up with it, and tell us about your baby.
Yeah. Oh man, my baby is about 5 or 6 years old right now, so it's getting ready to go to kindergarten. And yeah, it's about a high school girl. Her father left her to become a full-time superhero. Everyone in the world loves him except for her. And then she inherits his abilities. We do have some twists and turns in this comic book, which I'm sure we'll end up discussing in the episode. But yeah, so we're up to issue 7 now, and how to come up with this story. So this is actually originally a screenplay I wrote for college. I'm out of college. I got my master's degree, so I'm kind of far off of college, 26 now. But yeah, I wrote a screenplay, and I said, hey, I really want to make this into a comic. At the time, the New 52 was going on. I felt like there wasn't a lot of family/character-driven stories, and everything I love about comics. I'm going to put this in this one comic. And I think I've done a pretty good job at making myself happy, at least with that, and in tackling the themes I like.
Absolutely. That's awesome. That's something that I pick up because obviously Kat also runs a YouTube channel and does a weekly comic book review. And really great review, by the way. Her pick of the week this week was Daredevil. So, it made my top 10, not number 1, but we all have different varying tastes. You are drawn, it seems, to books that are heavily involved in subtext and characterization. The character is super important. So how important was the character of Casey for you? And is there a piece of you and her, like most writers put a piece of themselves in their characters and whatnot?
Oh yeah, I think it's so funny. So I do a lot of interviews for this, and the question I always get is did your dad leave? Is that where this is coming from? And I say, no, my dad got me into comics. We have a great relationship. And, it's great though that people are able to connect to the book. And I guess I do a realistic enough job at showing a girl whose dad left her, even if I didn't, grow up with that. So I'm glad that, people are connecting to it. Anything from me? Yeah, I think all the characters have a little bit of me. I think for Casey, I'm brutally honest. Maybe that's why I'm a critic. I try not to be mean, but I'm a very honest person. I usually wear my feelings on my sleeve. So that is very much Casey. She's very honest, and she'll tell you as it is. And then Wes is the geeky side, and I think a lot of my personality type is in Stephanie as that character. Okay. I hope I'm nothing like the mother, Jessica. I don't think I am.
Okay. Well, we all have a little bit of that inside of us. We got to recognize that. That's why the villains are important,
That's true. We're all a little villainous inside. Let's just hope not that villainous.
Yeah, right? And I'm sure it gets worse. I'm sure you got plans for that.
I do, for sure. I will say, and this is actually part of the Kickstarter, we have a $250 tier that I'll spoil issue 8 for you. And issue 8 is, if you thought issue 5 had a big twist, we have 2 big twists in issue 8. One in the middle of the issue and one at the end, and it literally changes the whole book. It's going to be a different book in issue 9.
Oh man, that's crazy. So what made you decide to go this route, to like do it on your own, to kickstart it? And this isn't your first work, right? You did another one. Her, like, they called her the dancer or something like that.
Yeah. So like Fall Like Daughter was the first I published, but they call her dancer after like issue 3 or so. I started publishing that. And the reason being is like you can't really pitch to Image or whatever, and at least back then, that's my thought. Like back 5 years ago, before COVID, before everything that happened with Diamond, the comic book industry was very different. It was like, okay, you do your own comic, you make a web comic. Even before that, I mean, webtoons existed, but it's not as popular as it is now. You make your indie comic, and then hopefully it picks up. And some editors see it, and then you'll have a chance to pitch, right? You'll have a chance to at least get your foot in the door when you submit to Image. Like you'll be lucky, like you can submit to Image if you want. You probably won't get it if no one knows who you are. So you have to build your own work. And now, I mean, definitely I would love to get into the direct market, but it's not my final goal. I think that's kind of what I've learned with COVID, and I've learned from, just watching people like Scott Snyder and all of these creators saying, oh, I don't need a middleman. I could just go to Kickstarter. And something I've also noticed, like being in the business a bit more, like you make some more money doing it. You don't have to cut any halves. Like everything you make is for you and your team. You have a lot more control. So that's another reason. So yes, I love doing Kickstarter. I don't see myself stopping doing Kickstarter, especially for like Fall Like Daughter. I don't plan on, even if someone comes knocking on my door, Image Comics or whatever, I really don't plan to give that book to anyone. It really is something I want to self-publish. That doesn't mean I don't want to publish in other places. I love to do more work for hire. And also if Image wants to pick up They Call Her Dancer, which I actually am pitching around right now and talking to a couple of companies about it, then I'm like, yeah, sure, take the dancer. So there's certain books I think that live well on Kickstarter or your baby. And not that the dancer isn't my baby, but it works better, I think, in the direct market because it's a mini series. Like Fall Like Daughter is an ongoing book. I don't see an end for it. The dancer has very much a beginning, middle, and end. It's actually been finished for about a year now. We're just coloring it, and again, it's just been it's been in the gear of trying to. We're hopefully gonna get a yes for it, and just talking to people. So we're kind of in that gear and like figuring out, oh, maybe we could do Kickstarter because you can do Kickstarter and also pitch. So it's just figuring out what route you want to go. So I just think the industry has changed so much in the past year.
Oh, absolutely. And so many creators are jumping to Kickstarter. You mentioned Scott Snyder. He funded his newest, and it's even an Image book, but now they're going to crowdfunding for that. I mean, Keanu Reeves crowdfunded a comic book. That's crazy. Everybody's jumping in on it now. When we had David Pepose on the channel, I know you're friends with him, and he said that he just loved doing it. Like this may be what he kind of does now. And of course, he's got an Aftershock book coming out. He's still doing published work, published by a publisher aside from himself. By the way, I'm so excited to get my copies of the OZ.
Me too. I know it's like 2 weeks from now because he just got it from.
He just got them. Yeah. Oh, I was so excited. But I think we got the digital one. I need to check that one out.
Yeah, we got the digital a couple of days ago.
Yeah, absolutely. So many people are jumping to that. Liana Kangas has had a lot of success recently with Kickstarter. Aubrey Sitterson just funded Beef Bros, which looks amazing to me.
That video was crazy.
That video sold me alone. That video alone. He dropped it on Facebook and I watched it and I was just like, what is this? And then I watched all of it, like all 4 minutes, and I was just transfixed. Like I was a kid watching wrestling for the first time.
Exactly. It's very much a wrestling, like, oh, this is cool. But yeah, it shows like Kickstarter, you can make like how much money he made. He made 40,000, maybe more. I don't even know. Last I checked, but and again, it's not all about the money, but it's nice as an independent creator to feel like you can make a living out of this, right?
Of course, and the big ones, the other publishers, they pay attention to that. And so it makes them, I'm sure, more open to pitches from you and from these other creators as well, which it's a little bit of a cutthroat industry sometimes when it comes to that, because it's a small market of comic book readers compared to movies and television and all that stuff. Now, I know you're an avid movie and television fan, and you mentioned that Like Father, Like Daughter started as a screenplay. I actually wrote a screenplay. One of my first screenplays I wrote, I am now thinking of how to break it into a comic. What was it like taking it from screenplay form into comic? Because they're different. So what did you have to make some adjustments?
Yeah, for sure. Because, especially for a screenplay, because there's 3 acts, so you have to, it just flows differently. Your climax is kind of different. In a comic, you have 3 acts in one issue, and it's such a short amount of time you have to do everything. Somehow it worked out. It ended up being 8 issues, and everything from the screenplay pretty much plays out here. Like, the main plot is in the comic, but the comic is better. Like, I made that screenplay like 6 years ago. I don't think the characters were as developed, and even the mom, I feel like I just revealed it, and then that's kind of it. Like, we didn't really, issue 6 was 100% written from the comic, because it's just like, I didn't have, issue 6 was going to be completely different. It was going to be just like Casey and Wes and Stephanie trying to save Invulnerable, which is more issue 7 now, and I changed a lot of bits and pieces for that as well. But yeah, issue 6, I'm like, I need to have something with Jessica. Like, we revealed that she's a villain. Like, I want to know her a bit more. So the comic gives opportunities to make these characters feel more alive. And I write television scripts. So I mentioned I got my master's. It was in TV writing. So I will say, if anything similar, it's TV writing and comics. Like, it's weird because I say in a movie, like, oh, you could write so much more in a comic because you have so many issues. For TV, it's like, I feel like I was writing more for the show because you have more time to tell stuff. Because I also wrote Like Father, Like Daughter TV pilot because I had an assignment. I'm like, why not? And I think that came out better than the screenplay. And I was able to tell stuff that I wasn't able to tell in the comic. Now, I'm not saying necessarily it was better or the same. I just think I was able to tell something else, which is kind of cool.
Absolutely. I just got to acknowledge everybody in the chat giving out stations. So station right back to you. So Like Father, Like Daughter, it's about this dude. He's a superhero, invulnerable, and he winds up making the decision to leave his family so that he can become a superhero full time. Now, there's a lot more involved in that, and you find it out as the series progresses. But what I love about it, and I did have an absent father. Like, I had a stepfather that I adored and was like a big important role to me in my life, and he's the one that got me into comics, right? So that was super, super fun. But so I know what it's like to kind of resent a father who was never really there. But what I love about it is that you got Casey painted in that way, but the father, like, you don't paint it as like he's the bad guy, right? Like, the way that you're painting it is so well rounded. And you see that, well, Casey has a lot to learn and some things that she needs to forgive, and so does her father, right? And that dynamic between them and the growth of that relationship through the 6 issues that I read, I thought was absolutely amazing. So well done on that, Kat.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a hard balancing act, It was definitely, he did something bad, and you want to show that because, like you said, you could relate to it, and there's so many people that could relate to it. So I didn't want to gloss over it, and I wanted Casey's pain and that affected her. That I think a lot of who she is today, or who she is in the comic, has to do with her dad leaving and her dad being this celebrity and everyone thinking he's great, and he's like, well, no, he's not. And I really wanted to paint what we think of superheroes, what we think of celebrity in general, and like the mask you kind of wear, like what you show to the people and who you actually are. And I literally wanted to pull the mask off of Invulnerable. He doesn't really wear a mask, but it's like that superhero trope or that symbolism I really wanted to show and say, no, like, yeah, he made a mistake. Are you allowed to make mistakes in life and be forgiven for them? And how big a mistake can you make? Like, how can you be forgiven for mistakes, a big mistake like that? And I think that was the big question. I hope the audience kind of asks that as well, is like, can you forgive Invulnerable? And I don't think there's an easy answer to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love too, because there's also the idea of him having to forgive himself almost, because he's handling the weight of that guilt and that shame because he did what he did for a reason, which makes sense in a very black and white superhero kind of way, right? The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Like, that's, Star Trek lore right there, which I love. So I think it's an incredibly well done book. Why don't you tell everybody real quick about the Kickstarter, They only got like 5 more days. There's a link down in the description below. There's also a link to Kat's YouTube channel to check out her videos. She covers a lot of television, pop culture, and especially comic books. And I love her weekly review because she'll go from her least favorite to her favorite. And I think you're very fair in your criticisms, and you always have a reason to you can always explain why you do or don't like something, which I think is great. Some people are just like, I just didn't like it, or I loved it, but you can't explain it. You explain it so well, and I think it's great. Tell us a little bit about the Kickstarter, the perks they can get, what they can do.
Yeah, so the Kickstarter, there's so much you could get here, and even if you just support it for $1, you are getting 20 worth of comics, so indie comics. We're talking about David Paposi, Spencer and Locke is on there, Jason Inman's Jupiter Jet, literally for $1. You're getting 20 books, and these are not like, small grade books. These are indie hits. The creators were nice enough to give these books to have an opportunity for new people to read it. So hopefully you guys could go check out for $1, and then every backing gets these books. And the more backers we unlock, the more books we unlock. We have 2 more right now. We need like 15 more backers to unlock Diary the Night, which is a vampire trade. This is a trade. You're getting a full-on trade if we get to 300 backers. And then 350 backers, which we only have 5 days left to do. Hopefully we can. You get Destiny New York from Pat Chan, which is also a very popular Kickstarter. So we also got a lot of stretch goals going on. So I can announce this here. Michael Oeming did a print for us to do a crossover with his comic. So the guy did Powers. $10,000 if we get there. We're close enough, I think, to hopefully get there for the end of the campaign. You'll get that print. And now there's a catch because we're already giving that print away for people who back both our campaigns. So we're actually recolored it. So it's a different print, and that's everyone's going to get that. So if you also back up his campaign, you'll get 2 versions of the print. So we're hoping we'll get to 10K for that. And I try to keep these prices really cheap because as a comic fan, I don't like making it too expensive. And I really want people to try the book. So digitally, it's $5 to try out issue 7. It is $10 to get the physical copy, but you're getting the digital copy and you're getting 20 other books. So you're getting a lot of bang for your buck. And then to catch up, it's only $25 to get 7 books digitally. And then it is $40 to get the trade, which has extra stuff in it. So it's 1 through 4 extra stuff. Issue 5, 6, and 7 for $40. And those are the big highlights of the Kickstarter.
I mean, that's a really good value, actually. Like, especially when you not even considering the 20 indie books that you're going to get, which, I mean, I'd buy that for $1. Who wouldn't? Right? Absolutely. So lots of value there, lots of cool stuff. I really liked it. The art is pretty decent, but I think it gets stronger as it goes on. How did you meet Wayne, and how did he get involved?
So I actually worked for a publisher it's interesting because I had this, the whole thing about, I guess the reason why I don't really want, Like Father, Like Daughter, I want it to be my own. So I worked for a publisher. We, worked really well, but we had like creative differences on where we wanted the book to go, up to issue 5. So I ended up leaving the publisher. We're still very good friends. Michael Watson, who's the a publisher of the company, he did a print for us. So we got good friends. But I wanted to go on a different venture. But they actually allowed me to meet Wayne. We had a different colorist also for the first 5 issues. So when my friend Lisa Moore does the coloring for issue 6, which is, I think, a big reason why you see a difference in the visuals for the book. And yeah, every issue we just try to up our game, which is important to us.
Yeah, he's got a great perspective that he puts on there. And I didn't notice that the colorist had changed. So you're right. I feel like it got more vibrant. It started popping more. Yeah. And the line work felt a little bit more confident for me, which I thought was really, really cool. And the writing, your dialogue is incredibly impressive. It flows right off of the page. It never feels stilted or stagnant or stale or any of that kind of stuff. And I'm honest too. So I'm not just like tooting your horn. I'm just being honest. Like, I really was very impressed with this book. So I would highly encourage everybody to check out the Kickstarter. You got 5 days left. Link down below, and a link to your comic book YouTube channel. What made you want to do that? I know that you're into journalism. You write for Newsarama, right? So
yeah, I write for Newsarama. It's funny.
They don't mind you having a YouTube channel. They're not like,
No.
whoa, don't do that. Write
No,
an
they
article.
actually, yeah, no, I'm really happy. Like, because I work freelance for them, I do, like, because I've worked for so long for them, I do have a set amount of articles I do for them, but technically not full time. So I'm a freelance, so either freelance for another website. But honestly, like, they've been so great about like me expanding my career and doing the best I can. Like they even told me like, oh, you know, go check this out. Like if you want to get another gig as well, that we could like put it on top of this gig. So that's really nice. So point being is that they're great. I love them. I love working for them, and they don't have any grievances that I work on YouTube. I obviously try not to do the same things though, like the stuff, but a lot of stuff I do for Newsarama is interviews, and I do a few interviews for Comic Uno, but not anything that would conflict for Newsarama. So like mostly I do like DC and Marvel interviews, and I don't do that for my channel as much. I cover the comics. I used to do reviews more for Newsarama, but again, just the job kind of shifted in doing interviews and features. So I also just don't do the same things for them. So that's nice. How I started the YouTube channel, I started almost 10 years ago. So that's weird. That's crazy. And
Nice.
yeah, so I was on a website called Comic Vine. I'm sure some of you guys in the comments remember it. Back in the day, they used to do video reviews. And I remember I was in high school with my friend, and we're like, man, we want to be, back then it was Tony and Sarah, like, we want to be like them. So we asked them, like, hey, can we, like, kind of steal your format? And they're like, yeah, go for it. And we did reviews on, it was called Comic Duo back in the day. And we did reviews. My friend kind of got out of comics, still my best friend. But he didn't like comics anymore. So I was like, I'm going to call it Comic Uno because, you know, a lot of people don't know where that name comes from, but that's where it came from.
Thanks for explaining the origin.
Yeah, that is the origin. It actually used to be called Comic Duo. So that's the reason Comic Uno now. And, you know, the show's definitely changed over the years. They used to do like single reviews. And back then that was more popular. And I guess the algorithm of YouTube was a little better in that regard. But now YouTube likes longer format of stuff, which is great because I love doing the best of comics. I think it allows me to talk about everything I want to for the week of comics. And then I'll try to do like a topic video. So I'll try to do like something that happened in the comics and talk about it. But yeah, I also try not to overwork the channel. You know, if I have a strike of inspiration, I'll do it. And, you know, and I appreciate the compliment of, I guess, my critical lens. Cause it's funny. I was having McDonald's with one of my friends, and I'm also like kind of critical. Like I like analyzing even food, right? Like I always like, oh man, this tasted good because of this. So I always say, like, if I wasn't a comic critic, I'd probably be a food critic. And I was asking him like a stupid question. I was like, oh, well, like, why do you like Sprite? He's like, what do you mean? I just like Sprite. And no, like, tell me, like, describe it. Like, why do you like it? And he's like, I have no idea. How would you describe it? I'm like, well, it's refreshing, and it's something it's not as heavy as soda. Like, oh, okay. So I feel like that's kind of how comics come, right? To me, it's just like you can analyze it and kind of break it down, and not everyone's brain works that way, but for some reason my brain works that way, and I utilize it for the channel.
That's awesome. That's good stuff too. I like Sprite because it's crisp, it's refreshing, it feels clean, and I love the bite of the carbonation.
Exactly. See, and that's why you also have a critical mind.
At times. I love your channel. I love your reviews. I love your perspective. I think you do great work there. Everybody needs to get there. Why is the channel called Hayden Claire Heroes? Because I'll tell you what, I'm so stupid because for the longest time I thought your name was Hayden. And then I realized, oh no, I know what that is.
I know. So I created that channel back in 2009. I loved Heroes. I was also a freshman in high school. So is
that an excuse, or are you trying to apologize for it?
Yes, I am. I'm making a sign of apology here. Yeah, and I made it, and I was kind of scared to change it because then you're kind of changing your brand and people wouldn't be able to find you. Yeah. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll keep it, you know? But yeah, Hayden Claire Heroes was because of Heroes, and I really liked Heroes back in the day. Yeah. And I never changed it. So
there's no shame in that. There's no shame in that. The Heroes was, Heroes was something that like everybody was telling me, like, Robbie, you got to read Heroes. I've been in the superheroes and comics my whole life. So that everybody that knows me, that's what they associate with me, amongst other things. But they were like, you got to watch Heroes. So I was like, okay, I'll watch it. And I thought Heroes was really good if you took out like half of the season. Like if you took out some of the storylines and truncated it just a little bit, it would probably flow a lot better. But at the same time, I'm looking at these people and I'm like, I get that you like it, but I mean, I've read all this stuff before. Like, this isn't new to me. Like, this is, I don't know. It's all right. Here, season 1 was pretty solid. Then
season 1 was great. Oh yeah, after that
it starts going crazy. But then again, who knows how much that writer's strike affected them, and it kind of messed up season 2 and all that kind of stuff. But
Heroes, but then season 3 and season 4 also were bad. So I don't know.
So bad.
Yeah, they were actually worse than season 2. So I don't know if the writer's strike really did much.
Yeah, you're probably right about that. I think that he had a great idea for one season and then didn't know where to go after that.
I think that was the true answer on that one. But yeah, I mean, it was a cool show because we didn't have a lot of superhero shows at that point. So we had Smallville, and now obviously it's very different. But that's all we had. So when you had like an original show, no IP, that hardly exists anymore. It's like, oh man, that was cool. And then it wasn't so cool after a while, but it has a special place in my heart for sure.
That's awesome. And I think it had a big impact. Now that I think about it, I never really thought about it this way, but that show was so popular. And you were right. There wasn't a lot of superhero content on television at that time. And I really think that its success, kind of like that Spawn movie, it may not be the best thing ever, but it led studios to realize, I think people could dig on this kind of stuff.
For sure. I mean, I think Smallville also helped in that regard because then Arrow wouldn't have been Arrow, whatever, and then, whatever. Also, they did a really good job at like digital cross-promotion because it was like 2009, and they were able to like have these motion comics and like these little things. They're able to get people like on the internet to interact as well, and I thought that was kind of interesting and new or whatever.
I loved how they got like Tim Sale, to like help out with the art in the show and all that. I loved going to the comic book world, and I'm starting to relive my Heroes experience now. I'm like Hero himself, right? That was his name, the Japanese guy that could stop time. What a great character. They never really did much with him. No. But I do remember, wasn't there when they explain how they all got their powers, and there was an eclipse, but the eclipse happened in Japan and in South America and like in
somehow
in the US
everywhere
at the same time. Oh my goodness. That's funny stuff. Now we're talking about Heroes. See, I told you the show can go. You never know where we're going to go. So
I love we're at Heroes. That's good.
Well, that whole save the cheerleader, save the world thing is still something I think about all the time. And you even have it in your background.
I do. I'm glad you noticed that. I got little Easter eggs. Yes,
absolutely. I do the same thing. I just put weird things sometimes and see if anybody notices them. So that's always fun. Heck yeah. What shows are you digging right now?
Right now, it's so interesting because a lot of times I get a lot of people saying, watch this comic show. And there's a few comic shows I'll watch. I love Harley Quinn. I think that's a great show. It's probably one of my favorites right now.
The animated one, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I've been hearing so many good things about that. I'm typically not a big Harley fan, but I hear it's so just rambunctiously funny.
It is, but the story is also like surprisingly good. And I've gotten like 4 people into this show. Well, 2 of my friends, I was able to watch it with them. Like I had some press screeners and we watched it together. So I was like, oh, let's watch. And season 1 for the press screener, I can say this now because it's been out, but we got the whole season 1 like 3 months early. So we binge watched it all. And then season 2, we didn't get as early. So we get like a week before. But anyways, I have 2 of my friends who are, comic fans. And I was like, let's watch it together. Pre-COVID. We ended up watching it all in one sitting, and we loved it. And then season 2 came. I'm like, oh my God, I love this even more. And I got a couple other people into it. Like some people I went to my master's class with, and another friend I do podcasting with. They're like, oh my God, this is really good. I'm like, yeah, I told you. And they all 4 of them thanked me to watching it because the story is honestly kind of reminiscent of Batman the Animated Series. Like not the same type of story, but I would say the way it turns a comic narrative and does something different with it, but still kind of feels like a comic. I feel like Harley does a really good job at. And then the comedy is perfect and it's well casted. Who knew like Kaylee Cuoco would be a good Harley, but she is, and Poison Ivy's really good in it. She kind of reminds me as Lane from Daria. Yeah, it's such a good show. But going back to it, I don't watch as many comic shows for leisure, unless it's like a comic I like really like. Even though I gotta watch Stargirl because I actually really do like Stargirl. But I try to watch like other stuff. So I watched like Haunting of the Hill House, Bly Manor. I'm sorry, just recently. I watched all of Seinfeld. I know that's strange, but I've seen Seinfeld before, but never in order. So it took like 2 months to watch all of Seinfeld.
I am like probably the hugest Seinfeld fan you have ever met.
Oh,
like,
good.
I love the hell. I just literally had a conversation with my homie today that lasted 30 minutes, just reminiscing about different episodes.
It's such a good show, and like all my friends are like, "Oh my god, there's so many other shows you could be watching. You're watching Seinfeld." I'm like, "Yeah," because it's like so relaxing, and sometimes after a long day, you just want to like eat lunch or dinner and like watch some Seinfeld. So yeah, I do watch comic television, but again, there's just so much of it. I try to do that more on a work basis than hey, I'm gonna go relax and watch The Boys, even though I have to watch The Boys. This actually might be the exception to the rule because I feel like it's just looks like a good show.
Yeah, did you say that you haven't watched it or you have?
I have not watched The Boys.
I haven't watched it either, but I didn't like the comic. But everybody keeps telling me that doesn't matter. I should still watch it because it's good. And I'm like, but I don't like the comic.
Yeah.
And
I've never read the comic, so I have nothing besides like the log line of what it's about.
Yeah. Well, I heard they toned some things down, but I can't even really honestly say I don't like the comic in its entirety because I only read like the first 7 or 8 issues of it when it first released. Though. Yeah. Garth Ennis sometimes, I like his work a lot, and then sometimes it's just so farcical and it's so like his hatred of superheroes. And like when I read The Boys, I was like, I get it, bro. You don't like superheroes. I get it. Do something else. Do another Preacher. I thought his work on Preacher was phenomenal because that book was crazy. It had a lot of like crude, rude, raunchy humor, but it also had heart. Had a lot of heart to it. And I really love Preacher. But I hear The Boys is good. Was Bly Manor good? Because I like Hill House until the end. And I'm nervous about Bly Manor because I don't know. I've heard some kind of mixed things about it.
For me, it was slow. So I really liked, I guess I could say this, but there's 2 girls in it. Something happens with them. I don't know. This is not much of a spoiler. Do you care? It's like a minor.
Go ahead. Who cares?
Okay. So the 2 girls end up together. The one who's like the main character and some gardener. So like their story is really good, and they're like the meat of the show. Like that's like their relationship is kind of like the basis of the show. Kind of like the family dynamic was the basis of Haunting of the Hill House. So that was good. It was just like kind of everything surrounding it was not as interesting as Haunting of the Hill House. There was a lot of slow episodes.
Yeah.
So is it worth watching? For those 2 characters, yes. But I think Haunting the Hill House is better. And if you were bored by the last couple episodes, I feel like Bly Manor kind of leans into that a bit, sadly.
I just feel like in Hill House, they, I don't know, they gave it it's not too happy of an ending. It's not like it's necessarily a happy ending, but they just kind of wrapped everything up too neatly, I thought, in a way. Like, I don't know. And it's been like, I guess, like a year and a half since I've watched it. So it's been a while. This year, I haven't been kept up with too much. I just finished Brave New World, which based on the Huxley novel, but it was co-developed by Grant Morrison, and Grant Morrison is my favorite writer, period. Doesn't even matter if we're talking comics or novels or movies or TV or whatever. Grant Morrison, they're just like my absolute favorite. So I actually liked it. There's a lot of sex in there, and I don't think it's probably in the original novel from like the 30s or 40s or whatever. And now I'm rewatching Deadwood, but out of new shows, good stuff. Oh, you never seen Deadwood?
I think I've seen the pilot.
Do you like Westerns at all?
Not really. I couldn't even watch Westworld, so I think that shows how much I don't like. It's
very Western. It's I really like it. I think it's an incredibly well written show. But one of my favorite things is just people used to, or at least in these shows, back in the day, people used to talk more intelligently, even though they weren't as intelligent maybe as people are today. But I feel like our speech has kind of gotten dumbed down a little bit. And
True. Yeah.
And that, I mean, I'm privy to that. You know, I'm always like, awesome. This book is awesome, dog. It's dope. But I mean, those words make sense today. But I love the way that everybody. It's kind of like a Kevin Williamson script. You know, like where like these people are talking way too intelligent for their level of smarts and vocabulary, but I loved it. The vocabulary is much more expanded. I love it. The syntax.
I hear with Deadwood, it's just like you either love it or you're like, I can't watch this. And yeah, the pilot was enough for me, but it's a well-written show. I know the reason I've seen it twice is just from my TV background, because they're like, you got to watch this. I'm like for classes, I had to watch it twice. So like in my bachelor's degree, I watched it once, and then for my master's, I watched it. So yeah, it's I think it's at least something you got to give the pilot a try.
Yeah, I really like it. And plus I'm a big Timothy Olyphant fan, so anything that he's in, when he showed up in Mandalorian, I was just like, my heart. I was just like, oh my goodness, I have such a crush on that guy. I think he's the coolest. Ever since I saw him in Go, where he plays the skeevy drug dealer, he's like the coolest. It's like in Beavis and Butthead when they see Todd and they get hearts in their eyes. That's me when I see Timothy Olyphant. I'm just like, he was in a Santa Clarita Diet with Drew Barrymore. Did you ever watch that?
I watched the first season. It was good. But then right when I was going to continue it, it got canceled. So I was like, I guess I'm not finishing it.
I never watched season 3 because I was like, they were like, this is the last season. And I was like, I don't want to watch it then.
And they didn't know it was going to end. So I don't know if it really ended well. So I'm just like, And Drew Barrymore, like, she's a treasure. I love her. But
I had the biggest crush on her growing up. As a kid, she was, of course, in Gremlins, and she was in, or not Gremlins, but E.T. and Firestarter. Yeah. And I'm a little bit older than you, just a little bit, just a little bit. And when I was a kid growing up, I just thought she was like awesome. And then, obviously I had a big crush on her in Batman Forever, which I'm a little bit of a Batman Forever apologist, just a little bit, a smidgen of it. So,
hey, that's okay. I think if you enjoy a movie, that's all that matters.
The best thing to do with those 90s Batman films is to think that these are not interpretations of the comic book, but the 60s TV series.
Yeah, I could see that, especially Batman and Robin, which I can't get over as a Batgirl fan. Oh, man.
I don't like that one.
Yeah, I can't. I also watched it when I was older, so a lot of people who like it, they watched it when they were younger. Everyone that I've heard like it, like to make fun of it, I guess. They're like, yeah, I was 5 and I loved that movie. But like I watched it when I was in like junior high school. I'm like, this sucks.
Yeah, right? It came out in 97, right? Like 97-ish, I think. So I was like I think I was around sophomore, junior in high school at that time.
Wow.
And yeah, a little bit older, just a little bit.
Yeah, I was 3.
Yeah, thanks. I've been feeling down about my age, so thank you. I'm just joking. But I remember thinking Robin's costume was so dope, but I just thought that movie was so stupid.
Yeah, it was. Maybe Robin was probably the best part, and that's saying something because he wasn't that great.
There's a great moment where, and my other giant man crush aside from Timothy Olyphant is George Clooney. And so I love how George Clooney in the movie uses the name Dick in a very like, it's just really funny the way he delivers some of his lines.
Maybe he knew of like the queer subtext from like the old comics, or like, I'm gonna try to put this in a movie. Probably not, but let's just say.
Well, there's a moment where they're fighting over Poison Ivy, right? And he's just like, listen, Dick. And it's just like, it's so freaking funny because they're like, oh man, that's great. Chris O'Donnell, what a missed opportunity there to really have a Nightwing movie or something. If you notice his Batman and Robin costume is kind of very similar to what became the New 52 Nightwing costume.
I never noticed that. That's interesting. Yeah.
But it's basically because they took the Nightwing design, but they put the red on it. And I love the red. I think the red and the blue, I think they both look great. So
yeah, I like both of them.
Who are your favorite comic characters? I know you're a big Batgirl fan, right?
I am. I like Batgirl a lot. Believe it or not, Stephanie Brown, even though I would say Barbara Gordon as well, but like Steph is number 1 for me.
That's your Batgirl.
That's my Batgirl. I love her. I also love Mayday Parker, Spider-Girl, any of the Spider-Man stuff, the Spider-Man in general. Kitty Pryde, also a very big fan of. Those are my top. Also Carolina Dean and like the Runaways, I'm a big fan of.
Okay.
Julie Power as well. Love my Julie Power.
You like Power Pack. Yeah, that's right.
I love the Power Pack. And, for the 5 people who have read it.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, I read some of it back in the day because I'm a big Fantastic Four guy. That's like my favorite that's my favorite comic book. And so Franklin was involved for a while there with the Power Pack. You know, he would go off in his dream state and have adventures with them, and that was a fun little bit. Plus, they had that tie-in with Thor for Mutant Massacre. I remember reading that as a kid.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
They always had like fun tie-ins. And then like the 2010s, they like did the all ages book for a while, and they like said, oh, we're going to team up with Wolverine and the X-Men. Then after that, they weren't around for a long time, and they're like, Julie is going to be in Avengers Academy, and we'll see her for 2 issues and do something really interesting with her, and then just not see her for 5 years.
Yeah, right.
And then Alex, like we saw him in Future Foundation a little bit, but he was very much a background character.
I like the way he was used in Hickman's run on that, but you're right. He wasn't like supremely in the forefront. Now they really focused a lot on the Power Pack, a little, or half of the Power Pack in the, I guess the Jeremy Whitley Future Foundation.
Yeah.
But that came and went so quick, unfortunately.
I was so upset because I thought the first 2 issues were okay. Like, and I like Jeremy Whitley a lot. I like his writing a lot.
I love Unstoppable Wasp. I think that's such a great book.
I especially like the second volume a lot. I thought he did a great job. So yeah, I read the first 2 issues. I'm like, it's okay. It's getting its footing. And that's like when it got canceled. And then right at issue 5, like that last issue, it's like, oh man, they're doing so many cool stuff. And it's a shame that we can't see more of it.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned Mayday Parker too, because I remember that initial Spider-Girl series, which I did like. I liked a lot. And I also liked the Fantastic Five.
Oh, yeah.
I was watching a interview you did a week or 2 ago with I don't even remember what channel it was on. And you mentioned that Tom DeFalco is one of your favorite writers. And I was like, what? I never, ever hear anybody say Tom DeFalco is one of their favorite writers. He's one of my favorite writers because he had one of my absolute favorite runs on Fantastic Four with Paul Ryan. I adore his run on Fantastic Four. And now it makes sense. I'm making the connection. He did Mayday Parker, right?
Yeah,
so there you go.
Yeah, Mayday is my #1 favorite superhero. Will never be replaced. I've read those books as the cover has been falling off. And it's so cool. And I think I said that in this interview that you might have watched. I don't remember which channel it was either because I've done like a couple of interviews for the Kickstarter.
Just a couple.
But yeah, like it's kind of been surreal because Tom is the first interview I've ever done was with him at New York Comic Con, like so many years ago, like maybe 8 years ago. Nice. That was my first ever interview. And I talked about Spider-Girl, and he also is backed by my stuff. Like he's bought every issue of Like Father, Like Daughter, which has like been amazing. And
super cool.
Yeah, it's been so surreal. And I've been able to see him at Comic Cons and have a chat with him. So yeah, he's such a cool guy, and I love his writing. It's just so old school, but it also just feels timeless. And I don't think every writer could do that. Like if you read Spider-Girl now, there's maybe some art elements that feel like the 90s, but I feel like the story is pretty timeless overall. And a lot of his Spider-Man stories are too. And that's why I love him. It's just his Spider-Man stuff. I think, it's great. And he's done so much for Marvel. And yeah, if you haven't read any Tom DeFalco stuff, read it.
Oh, he was editor-in-chief for a while. He was like the guy. And I loved when I was in the 90s, they would always do those little bullpen bulletins, right? And they would have those silly cartoons and the caricature of him. And he would let them poke fun at him and things like that. And he just seemed like a cool guy. I've never gotten to meet him. I would love to meet him. Paul Ryan unfortunately passed away, but I would love to meet him to be like, dude, your Fantastic Four run like literally changed my life. Like for real. That was the moment I was like, comics are like my absolute favorite thing ever. I was like, what do you mean Alicia Masters is a Skrull? What? You're blowing my mind, man. And then he killed Reed and Doom. But they weren't dead. They were just in the future. And I want to know more about the character of Hyperstorm. They need to bring that character back.
Yeah,
you probably never read his Fantastic Four. I don't know.
I read some of his Fantastic Four, not the whole run, but the Alicia stuff I have read.
Nice.
Yeah, you should talk to him. He's great, especially like just going back down memory lane with that type of stuff is cool. Yeah, it's so crazy how many stuff he's like kind of touched upon because he did Fantastic Four. He created Dazzler. Come on. Right.
Yeah. I always forget that because I always attribute that to Claremont, So
yeah, because he did more with her. I love Dazzler. I think Dazzler's one of those characters that I feel like if the right writer, Marvel, I'm right here. But yeah, if the right writer like did something with her, the idea of influencing music with comics, like we've seen it before. And Dazzler did in an interesting way with her disco-ness, but like modern music and the style of music in a comic with Dazzler, I think would be super. And also, like, again, going to like celebrityness, I think that'd be really cool. Like looking at a celebrity, like being a mutant, and like how people would look at that in 2020 or 2021. I just think there's such a fresh story there.
Yeah, like, and what is humanity's view on Dazzler during the Krakoa stuff? Because a lot of humanity now is rightly suspicious of the X-Men, right? Because they're doing some really weird culty type stuff. Lots of craziness. You're a big Kate Pryde fan, you said, right?
I love her. She's great. I'm so glad she got a spotlight now.
Are you liking Marauders? That's like one of my favorite X books.
I do. It's my favorite right now. I really just like what they're doing with her. I know a lot of people are just like, oh, why didn't she end up with Colossus? I'm so glad she didn't. I think everything that we've gotten now is because she said no to him. And I think that we've gotten such a cool self-discovery journey with her. I just recently wrote an article for Newsarama about like her bisexuality. And I hope that's something that's touched upon a bit more, because like we're starting to get a little bit about that Marauders. And I think that's awesome, because that's been like 30 years in the making. But she's been great, and I think it's everything that, at least what I love about Kitty. Like, she's strong, and I mean, strong is honestly the biggest word to describe her. But she owns into her emotions. I like the twist what they did with her by killing her, and I love what they're doing with her and Emma. Good stuff. The finger tattoos and all. I don't love her outfits, but I mean, what's Kitty Pryde without a bad outfit?
I'll tell you what, I love that when she decided she's going to be a pirate, she went full on pirate. She's like, I'm getting the hat, I'm getting the coat, I'm getting the boots. Like, I loved it. I thought it was great. I think this has been some great work. And I'm glad she didn't wind up with Colossus either. I know a lot of people are fans of that, but I always thought that was creepy. Because like she was like so young when they started that romance, and Colossus is a character I think should be way cooler than he actually is. So.
I agree. I think they're both. I would honestly say Colossus has been very defined by Kitty Pryde, like their relationship. I just feel like when you think Colossus, you think, okay, he's the dude that throws Wolverine, and he's the dude that's with Kitty Pryde. Like, that's
he's
all
the
you
dude that throws Wolverine. You're right. That's so funny. I remember being a kid and being like, Colossus is weird, because I always thought he looked cool, but I was like, I hated in the comics when he wasn't in steel form, because I was like, that's the dumbest costume I've ever seen. Like, who would just wear that? The shoulder pads.
It's weird. But no, I like that they did that twist. I really do. I just feel like it was honestly like a part of her journey. I think it was like, because it goes back to her and Star-Lord. She's like, oh, I really want to get married, and then she realizes, like, I think I'm just doing this to try to find myself, and I don't know who I am yet. And I like that. That's always been her character. She's like always trying to find her identity, and I think that's just part of the journey.
I think that's an important story to tell, because so many people, they feel like, well, this is, for instance, in your book, Like Father, Like Daughter, one of my favorite plays is Death of a Salesman. Like, I love Death of a Salesman.
Me too. Right? Yeah, that's why I added it.
One of the very first stories I ever came up with, my main character his name is Twiz Lomax, right? And that's all kind of based in on that. And I just love that. And so I totally forgot where I was going with that, because I got distracted in my head about the Loman stuff. Anyway, what was I even thinking about?
Death of a Salesman. We were talking about identity with Kitty Pryde.
Everybody sold this idea of what the American dream is, and so many people feel like, well, I got to get married, I got to have kids, I got to do it by this age, and that journey that Kitty/Kate has had is kind of saying, no, that's not necessarily it. Find yourself, be a complete person, like what makes you happy. You can't define your happiness by making somebody else happy. And I think that's why she left Colossus at the altar, which though I'll tell you this though, as a built up event, that was kind of a shady thing that Marvel did there. But I do like that they were like, just kidding, it's Rogue and Gambit. And I was like, sure, let's roll with that.
I will say, like, there could have been better dialogue work when it came to it, right? Because like the stuff we're saying this is like fans of comics, people have been reading X-Men comics for a long time, and that's why we could piece it together. But I feel like that should have been on the page a little bit more. Is like Kitty should have said like, "Oh, it's because I want to find myself." It's like you have to piece those things together. It's like it's a map, right? It's like it's a conspiracy theory map. You're like, okay, I think this is the reason. And there's all these strings, but I think that could have been explained more. And yeah, it was a little shady because you also had the Batman and Catwoman thing, I think happened in the same week. So it was like, oh no, I'm sorry.
Yeah, 2 weddings that just ain't gonna happen, you know. And then recently the X-Men have a wedding that they didn't even announce, and it just kind of came out of nowhere, and you're like, what?
And that was a weird one. Yeah, the Cypher one.
Yeah, with Cypher. I reread Ten of Swords all together in like a few nights, and it reads so much better that way. I felt like it was so good, and then it just kind of like why did it take this goofy pace all of a sudden? You know, it was taking this deliberate approach at building up the threat of Arakko and Genesis, and I thought Genesis and the Horsemen were like the best new characters of the year. Whose punchline? It's all about Genesis for me. and then it just like somebody turned the Benny Hill music on, and it got a little kooky and crazy, but still fun, and a really great usage of Saturnine. And I've never been interested in that character, so I thought that was well done by Hickman and Howard and the rest of them by making me actually care about Saturnine and interested in her. So there you go. And Herminio, you're right. We got Rogue and Gambit married, so that you got to be happy about that. Plus, we got the Kelly Thompson series, Mr. and Mrs. X, which I loved. I thought that was a great series. And I've always hated
Kelly
Rogue.
Thompson touches is so good.
I pretty much think so. I've always hated Gambit, and therefore I like Rogue, but I don't like Rogue when she's mixed up with Gambit. Like I just always hated it. Like I don't know, it just felt like ridiculous and just repetitive. And but no, Kelly Thompson, she turned me into a hardcore Rogue and Gambit fan. So like I would love for them to give her another. Her Black Widow's been really good, and I know that you were
just gonna say that. Yeah,
you were saying that that's a character you don't usually relate to, but like her work's been so freaking good on that book, and she's doing some great character work that I don't think anybody else has ever done with Natasha.
Never. It's so hard because I think a lot of times with Black Widow, and the reason I don't like her is like she's always just this super spy that has no emotions. She's just like, okay, I'm going in. I gotta, be numb to everything because that was my life, and that's how I could go through the mission. And that's why it was always really hard for me to read Black Widow unless she was like in Avengers or something because she's interacting with somebody. But with Kelly Thompson, she totally reverses it to say, hey, I bet she wasn't a spy. I bet she like gave this life up. And I was so intrigued and so new reader friendly. Obviously, I know Black Widow is, but I just, again, never really got into her own series. And the artwork is so good for the book. And she just rocks it. I mean, anything Kelly Thompson touches, her Captain Marvel has been pretty solid. There's some arcs here and there. I've been like, oh, that one was okay, but it's still like a good arc. Yeah, I loved her West Coast Avengers. I'm trying to think of what else she's written. A-Force was really good. Like, yeah, everything she touches.
The best thing she's ever written is Jim and the Holograms. I'll just say that.
Oh, that's true. I forgot she wrote that. And
that's like my favorite
Dazzler was in A-Force. So maybe she should write a Dazzler book.
Maybe she should. I think she should go back and do more Jim and the Holograms. I miss that. I'm looking at my complete collection of Jim and the Holograms, by the way. I love the hell out of that show and that franchise. And that comic book was great. Somebody needs to take her comic book and concept, her reinterpretation of it, and make a new show out of that. Because that would just be fantastic. And yeah, Kate Bishop's Hawkeye.
Oof, my love goodness. That book.
That Hawkeye run with Romero and Belair on the artwork is freaking phenomenal. That's like one of my favorite comic books when it came out like in 2017 or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I love that book.
I love Kate and that she had a spotlight because like I'm a big Young Avengers fan. So I was like, no one really knew who Kate Bishop was, or like unless you really read Young Avengers. And then she started obviously Hawkeye in the Matt Fraction run. Then people were like, oh, Kate Bishop, this is a cool character. So I'm glad like more people know of her. Because we were talking about this pre-show about Elektra, but like Kate Bishop, she's like a really privileged girl, but she's like, nah. She's like, she's like Robin Hood, right? She's like, no, I'm just gonna be this private investigator and kind of leave that all behind. And yeah, I love her. I wish more people would do stuff with her.
I'm sure that we'll get more coming soon because I was so excited when we saw the leak from the show. And it's I can't remember her name, but she was
Haley Steinfeld. Is it Seinfeld?
I don't think it's
something with it's something with the S though.
something. She was in the Coen Brothers True Grit remake, and I'm so freaking pumped for this show. And Pizza Dog's in it. Like that's all we need. That's really all we need.
I'm so excited, and also I think we're getting definitely in a Young Avengers track because we have Ant-Man 3, which I think Cassie Lang's gonna play a bigger part in. So I'm like curious if Hawkeye is just gonna be a spinoff to either a Young Avengers movie or TV show. Hope TV show because it makes more sense.
You know, people have been specking on that for years, and it makes sense, and it's a cool way to like imagine because we know that Kang is going to be in Ant-Man 3. Right. And they got, I don't remember his name, but he was in Lovecraft. That's another show I watched this year that I loved was Lovecraft Country.
Heard great stuff. I want to binge that one.
That's a really good one. I definitely want to rewatch it, especially for the ending. But Jessica Jones by Kelly Thompson. Nobody else I think could have handled that character after Bendis except for Kelly.
Oh, she did. And also like Emma Frost is so freaking good. I love her Emma.
Yeah, it is. She's such a great writer. She's got to get more work. And she's got plenty of work if you really start thinking about it.
I want to see a big flagship. I would love to see her like write Spider-Man. Like, why not?
Yeah. I thought she was a shoo-in to be one of the X-Men writers, to be honest with you. I was surprised that but I think they really tried to give her the flagship when they gave her Captain Marvel, as the movie was coming out. But I think it's been a bit, it's been okay. But Carol's always been a hard character for me to really get into because sometimes it seems like they don't know what to do with her. I don't know, but
I agree with you on that one. She also has Deadpool, so she's kind of has a flagship. Yeah,
she does do Deadpool. I forgot about that because I don't read it because it's Deadpool.
I don't either because it's Deadpool.
And if anybody could get me into Deadpool, it would be her. But I read the first few issues and I'm like, I just can't. I
didn't like the art. And also Jeff the Landshark was in and I still couldn't get into it. I was like, not even Jeff could get me into this.
Jeff the Landshark is the best.
He is.
That's the best creation Kelly Thompson's given us so far. So why not a 5-issue Jeff the Landshark series? If MODOK can get a series, give us Jeff. Yeah, I freaking would love it. How important do you think it is to have, since we've been talking about Captain Marvel, which I love the movie, by the way, just lean more into that kind of a thing, I would say. But how important is it, do you think, especially because we are getting more and more women into comics as time goes on? And there was a time when I was reading comics where it was like unheard of, like that a woman would be into comics. And I love that we're expanding that out. How important is it to have strong women characters, and also I think just as important to have strong female creators? How important do you think that is to you?
Very important. Yeah. I mean, especially the creator aspect, because you want to get female voices, you want to get different voices. And I think that's even more, it's important to have strong female characters, but I think it might be even more important for the creators because they could write anything, right? They could write male characters, they could write female characters, but they're coming from a different point of view. They're coming from a female perspective. And I would hope to have strong female characters, not just for the woman reading comics, but the guys too. Like I think it's just as important to have a role model in all regards. So yeah, just writing well-rounded characters is important. And I do think diversity is important both behind the scenes and in comics. And I hope we get to see more of that.
Absolutely. We get a lot of push sometimes for diversity on the page, but I think the most important work can be done behind the page, because that's where we're going to get different perspectives, and everybody, just regardless of your gender or your race or your orientation or anything like that, everybody has a different perspective. And it's all something that one of my favorite things about reading is that I feel like I get to go inside somebody else's head for a moment and then come out and I'm a little bit changed almost in a way.
Yeah.
It's almost like downloading like a patch or something in your own mental space. I agree.
I agree. Yeah. You're kind of sewing other people's stories and getting different perspectives.
Yeah. And I think that's important. And that's why if you just kind of lock yourself into one perspective, I think that's a bad move. It's you wind up in an echo chamber, right? And what you said is just as important for everybody to have strong female characters. I'm right there with you. Like probably the character that I have been able to relate to the most in my life through pop culture has been Buffy Summers. And it has nothing to do with she's a woman and I'm a dude, but that doesn't matter because she goes through the same kind of stuff almost that I do. And the funny thing about Buffy was that me and Buffy are the same age.
Wow.
So like
okay.
when Buffy graduated in season 3, that was my senior year of high school. Like I grew up and through high school with Buffy, and I really, really related to that because of that. Like everything that they go through. Like Buffy was the one I related to, not Xander, not Willow, not Oz, not Cordelia, not Angel. Though I wish I had Angel. No, I don't wish I had Angel's life, but I wish I had his jacket and his hair. But
yeah, that'd be perfect. His hair gel would be nice, but you could keep his life.
I used to always flip my hair up in the front, trying to be like Angel, so hardcore. And if I ever was bold enough, I would have like got some peroxide and gone full on Spike, because Spike is just my dude.
he's awesome. Yeah, no, Buffy's a great show, and it's also, you know, it could be more diverse, but I think at that time it's F11. You had the first one. Yeah, I think it was like the first lesbian character on TV, or at least in that regard, or at least one of the first kiss or something. I think it was the first kiss, not the first lesbian. It was like the first lesbian kiss or whatever. So like, you know, it was definitely a big show. I love Buffy. Buffy's great. I'm glad the comics are going on, but I don't like the comics as much as I want to. I thought it started really good, and then it kind of fell apart. Have you been reading the Buffy comics from Boom? I
read like the first 6 or 7, and when I watched your newest best comics of the week video, you nailed exactly what I was thinking. And I even said this on my channel when I stopped watching it, is I felt like this book is doing things too soon, and they're relying on your knowledge of the past history to kind of fill in the gaps. And I feel like they were just rushing into things and just doing things different just to be different. I don't know, like the Xander stuff. Like I don't see the point in that, and rushing. And then you said that Faith's involved now, and I heard that Kendra was already in there.
Kendra's in it. Faith's in it.
I'm like, what the hell are y'all doing? Like they just shoehorned everything in so freaking quick. And I'm like, you're trying to get to these full-on well-rounded characters, but it took 7 seasons for these characters to get there. So don't start there. And like I just feel like they were trying to do too much. I like the idea, for instance, that Drusilla was kind of like the master, and I liked that. I think Drew was a fantastic character. Juliet Landau. I'm a huge Buffy head. I really, really, really am. But like, I don't know. I just they're putting it in too fast and not really filling in the gaps, I feel. But I don't know. That's just me.
Yeah, for sure. We'll see how it goes. I'm dropping both, sadly. I dropped Angel, and I love Angel. I'm a huge Cordelia fan. She's my favorite TV character. I love Cordelia Chase. And
Cordy's great.
And she deserves the spotlight in these comics. She never gets the spotlight. Come on, give me a Cordy arc. I know you can't give her a comic because probably wouldn't sell well, but give me something from Cordy.
Yeah, I sometimes like to go back and read my old Dark Horse stuff. I like that stuff a little bit better, though it's actually not as well crafted and executed as the Boom book. It's got some decent art. Like you said, the art kind of seems like it's waning as the series progresses a little bit. Like the importance, Boom's kind of like, Boom's no longer defined by being the licensed comic book property, even though they do great work with licensed properties like Power Rangers, for instance. I think they're doing phenomenal work on Power Rangers right now.
Yeah.
But they're really making their own case as being like one of the best creator-owned companies out there. I don't know if everything's necessarily creator-owned, but more independent. I think Boom's my publisher of the year. I just love them.
Yeah, they've hit some really home runs. They got 7 Secrets. I know Something Killing Children's really good. I haven't gotten to like read all of it. I read like the first issue. Red Mother, man. I love Red Mother.
Red Mother is perfection.
So
Red Mother is perfection.
It's perfect writing, and I'm so glad you have read it, because there's like so many people like Red Mother, and they're like, don't know what I'm talking about, because not a lot of people are talking about it. So it's like perfect horror. The pacing is so good for that book. It's so good.
Yeah, some of my friends here on YouTube, like Bueller from Comics with Bueller, Bob from Everything Comics, Dylan from Dylan's Comics, we all love Red Mother. And we just like, for months, we've just been like, Red Mother's one of the best comic books out there. You got to read it. It's great. The pacing is so great. The artwork is, I like to always say, there's not a single thing wasted in Red Mother, whether a line of dialogue or a line of art, there's nothing wasted. Everything is so deliberate and purposeful in that book. And I feel like it's got a pace kind of like Hellraiser. Like Pinhead doesn't show up very often in Hellraiser. but when he does, it's so important. And the way that pace is, and I love that it's basically a story about this woman dealing with this trauma and trying to go beyond it. But what happens when you can't? When the trauma won't let you go beyond it? What do you got to do? So I love the book.
I feel like, yeah, that's like what's so cool, because horror is such a thematic genre. It really is about themes and symbolism. And that's the symbolism. It's Red Mother is her PTSD. So I'm curious, like, what the reveal's going to be. Like, I have a feeling she's Red Mother. I think she killed all those people. I think she's the one. Like, she doesn't know she's doing it. I think that's why they keep saying that name, because they're just calling for her.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, that's an interesting. I definitely think she's the Red Mother. I mean, I think we kind of know that almost now at this point. But it took me a while to really piece that together. But the image at the very beginning of almost each issue, I mean, that's her, you know. And I just, or at least some kind of. It's such a well done book. Oh my goodness, what is it? It's Jeremy Hahn, and Danny Luckert. Like, oh my goodness, that's such a magnificent book. And I know so many people are like, oh no, it shouldn't end at 12. Like, stories that have beginning, middles, and ends are some of the best ones out there.
And I think that's why it's pacing so well. And I think the reason it's doing so well too is because of building this tension. It's taking a very Hitchcock approach to horror. And that's been really cool. But yeah, it's like the best horror book on stands right now. And there's some good horror books. Like, you just had the whole entire Hill line, which I like. Basket Full of Heads. I thought that was pretty good. I haven't really read the other ones, but there's some good horror books out there. But I stand by Red Mother is the best because it just knows what the genre is.
Red Mother is one of the best. I also love Gideon Falls. Ice Cream Man could kind of be categorized as horror.
Yeah.
So I don't think Prince likes to list it as horror because it goes a little bit beyond that sometimes.
Yeah.
And Something is Killing the Children's great. I know you said just read the first issue. There was another one that I was going to mention. We were talking.
I'm trying to think of other horror books that are out there. I mean, I love American Vampire, so that's came back.
We were talking about Hill House. You should really read Low Woods.
Okay,
I think that's like the best one that they did. I love Dollhouse Family as well. Low Woods though was one that really, like, it just the more time that has passed since I've read it, and then I got to read it all again. Like, I just love it. Danny's artwork, it is absolutely amazing. The coloring, Tamara Bonvillain, she's the best colorist, I think, of the year. Her work on Once and Future is amazing. So I think you would really, really like Low Woods.
I'll have to check that one out. I'm always looking for good trades and stuff. So I'm right now reading my friend, I think someone even mentioned in the comments, Mike Spireslayer does Comic Book Corner 2.0. He recommended, the Donnie Cates book, God Country? I think that's what it's called.
Yeah, with Jeff Shaw.
The
guy that grabs the sword.
Yeah. He recommended that because I've been recommending for him to read Baby Teeth forever. And he's like, I finally read it and it was really good. Now you got to read God Country. I'm like, okay. But because of the Kickstarter, I haven't been able to read it. So I'm like, I went to get my hair done. I read one issue. And I was like, all right, I'm almost done. It's really good. And I'll get to it after the Kickstarter.
God Country's really, really good. That's probably my favorite Cates work. Buzzkill's really good too. Have you read that one?
I have not. Yeah. I mean, Donnie Cates is just so good, especially his indie stuff. I really like Crossover issue 1. That was really good. And I like Baby Teeth. That just comes out once a year.
I know, like, when's that coming back? Who knows?
Never.
I like Redneck too. I can't wait until they actually continue on with the Interceptor Reactor book, with the space vampires. I think that's super cool. Donnie Cates likes vampires. I think that's a good thing to guess.
I don't mind that though.
Buzzkill is interesting because it's just a 4-issue series, and Jeff Shaw's the artist on that one as well. The same guy doing Crossover that did God Country. They did the Thanos run together. They work so well together. But Buzzkill's about a superhero who is only super powered when he's drunk or on drugs, like completely messed up. And he's gone through the 12 steps and he's clean now. But now a big thing happens. And what happens when the world's ending and they need their hero, but the only way he can be a hero is to fall off the wagon. It's
devices.
Really cool book. Really cool book.
Such a cool concept. You know what's so interesting? Because we mentioned in the beginning of the podcast that, like, Garth Ennis, like, he hates heroes and that's what he does.
Yeah.
And I feel like Donnie Cates is the complete opposite. Like, the stuff he does to do a twist is to show how much he loves comics. And crossovers was like the perfect way. And I'm sure you relate to this as well. But like he worked at a comic book store, and it's just like you could tell that experience went into that first issue.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought crossover was a super solid first issue. And I'm really excited to see where they go with it, especially knowing that he can't use certain characters, but he's definitely going to use those characters as much as he can. And I'm sure we're going to see some Image characters pop in, right?
Yeah.
Like Spawn's got to show up.
I hope so. I would love to see like Paper Girls. I don't think that will happen, but I love my Paper Girls.
Paper Girls is amazing. Everybody's always, and I'm not trying to take anything away from Saga. Everybody's always talking about Saga as like one of the great. I'm like, y'all need to read Paper Girls. Paper Girls to me was my favorite Brian K. Vaughan book.
Me too, because I think it's short and sweet. Saga is a saga. And, you know, there's times where it's like, it reads better in trade. I actually read it originally in trade, so I think it reads a lot better in trade. And there's some crazy twists in that book. And that's like what Brian K. Vaughan does the best, is like his ending twist of a book. But Paper Girls does too. And Brian K. Vaughan's next to Tom DeFalco, one of my favorite writers. I love him to death. And I think he did a brilliant job with Paper Girls from the character work. He also like does female characters very well. And that's why, I don't even like, I'm not the type of person who's like, if you're a girl, you gotta write girl characters. You guy, you gotta write guy characters. No, I think you have to talk to other people to understand people's experiences. Like you have to do research if you're going to do those type of characters. But I think Brian K. Vaughan does some really, really good female characters. I think he gets it. And Paper Girls showed that. And you don't get a lot of comics where you get to read 12-year-old girls. You get a lot of 12-year-old boys. But you do not get a lot of 12-year-old girls from different backgrounds as well. And that was so cool about it. And I always say this, I did a whole video like essay about this, but Paper Girls was sold on, this is gonna be a book about nostalgia because it's an 80s book. And then the first issue is like, no, this is a book about how toxic nostalgia is. Read this. Like stop trying to be in your childhood forever. Like grow up in a way. And not like as rude as that, but like it looks at, it has a commentary less on people but more on media and like the trends of media, and says, no, we have to kind of get over this hump and do something new. And I thought that was really cool. Yeah,
that's a really cool perspective on it. And you're right. And I'm guilty of that, getting wrapped up in nostalgia. It was like one of my favorite moments of the year was getting this damn Punisher van that I never had when I was 10 years old and always wanted. And, I got it now, 10-year-old Robbie. Paper Girls is great though. And yeah, you think it's going to be, because at first it was an easy way to sell the book, to be like, oh, you like Stranger Things? Imagine Stranger Things, but they're Paper Girls, and check it out, and it's good. And then it goes crazy with the time travel. Like I love it. It's like, and I'm a huge fan of Cliff Chang and Matt Wilson. The artwork is phenomenal. I love their run that they did with Azzarello on Wonder Woman, which is crazy to me that Brian Azzarello wrote my favorite Wonder Woman run. It's just crazy to me. I love that damn run so much. We're covering it, everybody, by the way, in Comics Revisited Season 3. So get ready for that. Yeah, Punisher Van Station. You know it. Stillwater is a great horror comic book, everybody. That's a good one. Chip Zdarsky. Autumnal from Vault. Vault does some great stuff. Do you read Vault comics? Do you like the
I have not, because the way they sold, and I know they're great books, but the way they sold it's like pure sci-fi. I don't like sci-fi. So that's why there hasn't been a book where like I gotta get that, because like it's all science fiction. So, and it's so weird because people that I talk to, like, who know I write comics and I do stuff with comics, they're like, you like sci-fi? That means I'm like, no. Comics does not mean you're just like fantasy or sci-fi. Like there's different genres in comics that you like. Like I like horror a lot. I like superheroes. That doesn't mean I like Star Trek. I haven't read Vault is the point of that tangent, but I should.
Vault has really leaned in some great horror work lately.
See, I'll pick up that, because
I could give you a list of like 10 Vault comics off the top of my head that you definitely should read.
Do it.
Oh, Friendo, These Savage Shores, Fearscape, Deep Roots, The Plot, Wasted Space. It is sci-fi, but it's one of my absolute favorite comics. Hayden Sherman's the artist. Michael Morisi's the writer. Jason Werdy's the colorist. Jim Campbell's the letterer. Maxwell's Demons is one of, like, that was my first Vault comic, and it's written by Dennis Camp, who is such an amazingly brilliant writer. What else? She Said Destroy. It's a little
Heard
fantasy.
good stuff about that one.
Really, it's a really solid book. Joe Corallo, Liana Kangas, friends of the show, friends of mine. So yeah, there's a handful.
Yeah, what's cool is like a lot of these smaller companies are getting a lot of, a lot of scream, I guess, I don't know, but like, they're getting a lot of attention, like Boom, like Vault, and I think that's been really cool this year. And maybe this is the whole Diamond situation, or maybe it was a little bit before that, or maybe we're seeing more Marvel and DC people jumping onto. We're in the land of kind of the 90s in a way, where we're getting back to indie books just being really popular, and not to take anything away from the mainstream, because I love my mainstream books as well, but it's kind of cool that we're getting these pocket of indies. And I hope more comic readers, because I do, you go to the comic book store, and I go to the comic book store every week, and I still see a lot of people's piles just being filled with Spider-Man and Batman. But then I'll see the occasional, okay, here's AWA, and like here's Boom. And I hope more people do that. I hope more of the casual reader gives indie comics a try, not just people like us. I hope the Batman, Spider-Man readers go pick up some of these indie companies.
Absolutely, and that's part of our job here on YouTube. It's literally my job at the comic shop. And what I notice is there are some people that their stacks are always going to be Marvel and DC superheroes, and that's just how it's going to be. Right? You couldn't sell them an indie book or a non-superhero comic. To them, comics that equates superheroes. So there you go. But what I find is, in my experience at the shop, people start by getting into the superheroes, and then I start picking up on what they actually like. Because at first you think it's the characters that you're responding to, and maybe it is at first. But then I start noticing this person likes Jonathan Hickman. This person likes Nick Spencer. This person likes this kind of person. And then I start piecing it together. And then I go, hey, yo, you like the X-Men books? Have you read East to West? Or then I go, hey, yo, you like Spider-Man? Have you read Morning Glories? Because I don't like Spider-Man right now, but like read Morning Glories. And that's Nick Spencer doing what Nick Spencer can do. Right?
I 100% agree. Morning Glories, I think, was like one of my first indie books, like really like getting into an indie book. Yeah. I was like, oh man, because I just saw a teenage girl and I'm like, I want to read this. And I did. And I'm like, whoa, this looks so cool. And then you find out it's this like philosophy driven Plato referencing book, which is so good. And I wish he would continue. And I agree. I haven't been liking the current run of Spider-Man. I liked the beginning stuff he did, but Kendrick kind of, went out there for me. But yeah, the Morning Glories is what Nick Spencer does best. And surprisingly, Ant-Man was really good for me for Nick Spencer's run. Because at first, because I'm a huge Cassie Lang fan. So at first when they were doing her dirty and she didn't have her powers anymore, it's like they were taking away her heart. I'm like, oh my God, why are you making this awesome character a damsel in distress? And then you saw his whole picture. He's like, no, she's not a damsel in distress. This is part of her story. Of how she becomes a hero again, and her mom accepting her as a hero, and teaming up with her dad that we were finally been waiting for like 5 years or 10 years. So I guess the thing with Nick Spencer is you gotta see the whole picture. So I'm hoping that's true with Spider-Man as well.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I know some people like it. I get it, and that's fine. I'm not trying to hate on it. Like I said, I really like Nick Spencer's work. I think Infinite Vacation's another one of the best things he ever did, because he told a crazy, mind-boggling story in like 5 issues, which is not something he typically does. He is a bit long-winded. And I know I'm not trying to criticize him for being long-winded, because I'm long-winded. I understand that, everybody. So, but I do notice that though, like you'll have people, especially like younger people, they'll come in there with superhero stuff. They eventually get into, and then sometimes what happens is they become such elitist snobs and they drop superheroes altogether. One of my homies is doing this right now. And he's just like, I just don't even care about superheroes anymore. I'm like, never forget that Green Lantern was always there for you. Never forget that
thing. Like, that's the one thing I also have noticed in comics is like, I feel like sometimes you're in superheroes so much and they're just like, oh, I hate everything about superheroes. What are they doing over at Marvel and DC? I'm like, you're telling me you can't find one superhero book you like? It's like, you got into this for a reason. Or, there's people that just some reason still read comics and all they do is hate on comics. And I don't quite understand that. It's just like, then I guess don't read comics, but
I know a few of them.
Right? Right? It's like, what are you even doing? But yeah, for me, I don't ever see dropping unless the landscape changes so much. I don't see myself ever dropping Marvel and DC completely. I see maybe the hall getting a little smaller, a little bigger, a little smaller, a little bigger. I'm not gonna drop them. And same thing for indies. It's not. I don't think I'll ever just like not pick up an indie. So it's just like I feel like people need to broaden their horizon a bit in both directions. Like if you're an indie person, try out a Marvel or DC book because a lot of these books are doing indie stuff. Like, and what started that was Matt Fraction's Hawkeye. That's an indie book. It's an indie book, right? Immortal Hulk is kind of an indie book dressed up as a superhero book. So there's indie books within Marvel and DC.
X-Men Hoxpox, for instance, is one of the most Hickman books out there. You know what I'm saying? So if you like East to West, if you like Decorum, if you like Pax Romana, if you like all that stuff, you should read X-Men right now because he's taken the same sensibility over there. And it's great. But always what happens too is you got these creators, and like so many creators, they used to be that they would start indie, then they go into Marvel or DC. Now we're seeing them start indie, go into Marvel or DC, and then go back to indie, like your Ed Brubakers, your Matt Fractions. And then Matt Fraction, when he came into DC to do Jimmy Olsen, that's a character I've always hated. I've always hated Jimmy Olsen. I'm like, why do I want Superman to be running around with Archie? Like, it just always bothered me. I always told people, if I was in charge of Superman books, the first thing I would do, kill Jimmy Olsen. Make a big deal out of it. Matt Fraction and Steve Lieber did one of my favorite DC books last year with Jimmy Olsen. And it's a total indie sensibility that they're doing to that
100%. They're just like, the Silver Age comics? Let's somehow make it a modern comic and do this really meta book about Silver Age comics. And yeah, that's why I'm like, I can't get it, because there's these creators that started in indie comics that are making these books, and you gotta at least find one for Marvel and DC. You might disagree with what the company is doing in this second, let's say. I think, I love both companies, but I always think every year there's Marvel did better, DC did better this year, and it always fluctuates. I don't like picking favorites because I feel like that's also not great. It's just I'll only read Marvel. I'll only read DC. I think give it a shot too. There's always jumping on points in different books. Give it a shot.
Absolutely. And embrace both. There's no Marvel versus DC. It's silly. My favorite single superhero in comics is a DC character. It's Aquaman. My favorite comic book, long run comic book is Fantastic Four. That's a Marvel book. So there's room for both. This year, though, I think DC's got it on Marvel, but that might change next year.
That's so interesting. So I have the opposite. I thought Marvel did better in DC just because DC had the whole cancellation stuff. The stuff with Diamond. And then I don't think they had a lot of books. And from what I'm looking at, a lot of the books I enjoyed got ended. They got canceled, I guess. Suicide Squad, I like Teen Titans. And the only books I've been liking are the Batman books. I'm that's only one set of characters. So that's why I'm I don't think they have enough variety right now. And even though I think Marvel has a lot of books, I feel like Marvel did it. But honestly, I also think Boom was the best company this year. In regards to books, and Image was the best company this year, probably in regards of everything. Even the way they dealt with COVID and they dealt with their line and then still released these awesome books. I would actually say Image was probably in that regard the best company this year.
I gotcha. I think DC was better than Marvel this year because you said that you didn't think that there was a lot of variety in their line. I think DC has more variety because it's not just about the main superhero line. They got the DC Black Label stuff. They've got
the Black Label.
They got the YA books that are just soaring in bookshelves right now. They did some great work with that. They're really branching out, trying to diversify. They're making more of a bold stance on moving forward with digital first productions, I think, than Marvel is. I think they handle their digital content better than Marvel does. Except for the fact that the Marvel Unlimited app is obviously better than the DC app, but they're rebooting that whole DC app and it's about to be kind of similar to Marvel Unlimited. But the Marvel, and the other thing too, I look at it as the direction of the main line. Everything that led into metal, I thought was just brilliant. I love death metal. I think it's a fun event. I think it's exciting. It's exhilarating. With Marvel, I think most of their events this year have been they do these things which I almost call them they're kind of like placeholder events. right? Where they know like, oh, well, if we do a crossover, we'll boost sales for a little bit, but it's not the big thing. Obviously, the big thing that they were leaning into this year was the arrival of Null, right?
Yeah.
Empire came out of nowhere. So to me, like things like Empire, Civil War II, Original Sin, these kind of get thrown in just to kind of be placeholder events. I don't know.
Somehow Original Sin is still being affected. Like I didn't really like Original Sin. It just wasn't my thing. And then I'm always seeing this Nick Fury Watcher stuff from Original Sin. I'm like, I can't escape this. I can't escape Original Sin. I agree. I tend to drop events easily, which is so weird because, as a critic, I feel like I have to read these events, but I always give it an issue. I always give it an issue. But then I also felt that way with DC, like Endless Winter feels like a filler event because we're getting into Future State. And then Future State does seem like it's going to affect for March from what I'm seeing. So that's good because I was a little worried that was going to be like, okay, we just need to figure stuff out for March. Here's Future State. I'm not a huge death metal fan. I mean, that's also kind of like the view of like why I haven't been enjoying as much. But I do agree. You bring up some good points, and maybe I'm just seeing it from like the transitional point of view. But it's kind of cool they're doing such gutsy moves because, like you said, the digital stuff. We'll see if it works, and I think a lot of their plans will work. But it's going to change the industry a lot. And Marvel kind of played it safe, but at the same time, I kind of like the safety nets. I'm like, okay, now I know I'm going to get my Valkyrie. I don't have Batgirl this month. So I think it's just more of like the transition. I'm not, we don't see the full picture yet.
Yeah, and it would not hurt DC to do less Batman books.
Yeah, and I love Batman. I love Batman. It's like my bread and butter for DC, but it's just like I would like to see more Green Lantern books. I would want to see just more books in general of characters that would surprise you. I think that's the one thing I liked about Marvel this year, just in general, is that they'll give you a power pack book. Might not last long, but they'll give you a power pack book. I mean, you have the argument that they release way too many books, and that is true. But then like DC, it's just like, all right, I got Batman, I got Nightwing, I got Wonder Woman. But like, where's I mean, they made a Starfire book a little while ago, but where's Starfire again? Where's Stephanie Brown's book? I just like want to see other characters get the spotlight.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense too, because they are leaning heavily going forward, less on creators and more on the brand. And so they've we kind of know that, and that's why they trimmed the line down. That's why they lean so heavy into the Batman world. And I think DC is setting themselves up for a not so good 2021, but we'll see what happens post Future State, which there's a lot of creative teams on Future State that have me very excited.
Future State, it's so interesting because, again, I think we go into the mind frame of sometimes in comics, you hear a lot of negativity and people just want to say negative stuff. And it's interesting because a lot of people are like, Future State, I'm not going to get any of them. But I think it's so cool that DC is allowing these newer writers and these newer artists to step up into their playing field and work on Harley Quinn, to work on, Green Lantern. And I thought that was really cool is that we're getting new voices at DC for Future State. And yeah, characters you wouldn't normally see, like, Stephanie and Cassandra are getting a story. Gotham City Sirens, we haven't seen them in like 10 years. So I like that. I enjoy that we're like for 2 months getting something that's not just Batman.
Yeah, I know we were talking about the Batgirl stuff earlier. I forgot to mention that Cassandra's my favorite Batgirl by far.
Cassandra's
I love
great.
her so much. And I love that Birds of Prey movie, but oh my God, just don't call that character Cassandra.
Yeah, she's not Cassandra by any means at all. Yeah, no, I love Cass, and I don't think they do enough with her. And I really genuinely think they should make a Stephanie and Cassandra, even Barbara book. I think that would sell so well. I actually just posted an article about this on Newsarama, so I guess I could say it. Not that I have any insider information about this, but I did an article saying that I think it'd be really cool to do a Batgirls book and make it digital, because you're hitting a lot of different readers there. Because you have Stephanie Brown, a different background. You have Cassandra Cain, different background, and Barbara Gordon. You have such different fan bases there. You make it digital. You probably get some younger readers. You might get even some more readers that don't actually read comics and go to the comic book store. I say make Batgirls like, do it on Webtoons or something like that. Like do something crazy like that.
Well, did you know that in the next Batman book, which is a $7.99 book, I don't know if many people realize that, but there's 4 different stories in each one. One of them is a Batgirls book. Did you know that?
I do. Yeah, I'm gonna get it for sure.
Ayala. I'm so pumped. I'm a big fan of their work. I got to meet them last October, not this last October, but in 2019 before COVID, obviously. Super, super freaking cool. I love them. I think they're absolutely amazing. Reggie, thank you so much, my friend, for the super chat.
Yeah, awesome.
Kat, you're going to have to bear with me a second. I have to play this Joker video real quick. It's going to take a second.
No problem.
All right. I didn't want to distract too much from what we were doing here tonight, but thank you so much, Reggie. I do appreciate that. He says, how come my YouTube friends are cooler than my real life friends? Awesome show, bro. Welcome to the PCP Army, Kat. You are now officially joined. Everybody give a station for Kat, for Comic Uno. Be sure to check out her YouTube channel. Link in the description. Check out the Kickstarter for Like Father, Like Daughter. Kat, I had such a fun time discussing comic books with you. We got to do this again.
Please, let's do it.
Yeah. Even if you ain't got a Kickstarter, you ain't got nothing to plug. Who cares? I loved talking about comic books with you. That was super fun.
Me too.
Real quick, though, final question. Wonder Woman 2, 1984, which is a weird name for a sequel. Why, I'm just joking. Like where I was trying to lean, it's a weird stretch. What happened to the other 1,982 sequels? But HBO Max, obviously, they're going to have it on the day that it releases on Christmas.
Yeah.
And Warner Brothers made the announcement today that they're going to release all of their movies in 2021 in theaters and on HBO Max at the same time. Obviously, this is a big game-changing, possibly, moment for movies, and we're in definitely different times. What do you think about the news? You think it's a good thing? You think it's a bad thing?
I think it's a good thing because we don't know when we can go back to movie theaters, and I think holding on these movies long enough is just making them lose money. So I think they were proven, I guess, with Mulan, even though there was that $30 thing. But Mulan was the first one. Was there no? They did Happiest Season. I think did really well on Hulu, like extremely well, and that was supposed to be a movie in theaters. So I think they saw some of these other movies doing it, and they're like, oh, it's doing well. So I think it's a really smart idea. I know I'm going to be watching Wonder Woman on Christmas if my family allows it. If we can all watch it together and they all want to watch it, which I think I've asked them. I think they said yes. So I'll definitely be watching Wonder Woman. And yeah, I think it's a smart idea. Now, will it be smart in 3 years? No. I think they'll have to go back to the movie just for movie theaters. Like you need to get that money and tunnel that money there. But I think for now that we can't leave our houses, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, you were mentioning the Mulan, and I don't think it did near as well as they wanted it to, and that fee had a big deal to do with it. Having it just be part of the subscription, I think, is the better idea. I used to work at movie theaters. I love going to the movies. It's one of my favorite things to do. It's like one of the things I missed the most of this year.
Me too.
The movie theater that me and my homies worked at, that was the movie theater we went to, actually had to close permanently because of the shutdown. So the last film I ever saw at my favorite movie theater ever was Bloodshot. So awesome there. But I think it's good for the time being, but I really would hate to see theaters on the way out because they're already struggling so hard. But at the same time, what are you going to do? They try to release Tenet, and they didn't make their money on that.
No, and that's Tenet.
Yeah,
that should have done well.
Like, I'm the hugest Christopher Nolan fan, and I still haven't seen it because I don't go out right now except for to work. One movie though that also was a moderate success, being released in theaters and digital at the same time, was Bill and Ted. That's right, Face the Music. So I think they also saw something from them. So yeah, super, super cool. But yeah, I don't want the movie theater experience to go away at all. But on Christmas, I can get me some Twizzlers, I can get me some Cherry Coke, and I can watch Wonder Woman and just pretend that I'm at a theater. Or I can go to my homie John's house. He's got a projector, and it's like a theater there too.
Oh, you should definitely do that. Yeah, no, I'm excited to watch Wonder Woman. We waited too long. I'm curious if they'll do it for Black Widow at this point. Just do it. Just do it. Let's just see Black Widow at this point.
I think they should. Like, they would have, like, yeah, I mean, people would have jumped on, like in between seasons of The Mandalorian. I think Disney Plus's subscriptions go way down. And so if they would have just put Black Widow out this summer, I think it would. And because the thing too is, especially with the MCU, you're at this critical junction where you just wrapped up this 10-year-long story. So to a lot of people, if it takes so long for the next movie, they may just kind of forget about it or be like, oh yeah, those Marvel movies, who cares?
Especially with Black Widow, which is already like, spoiler alert, what happened to Black Widow in those movies. It's like, oh, why do we have this movie? I think luckily these TV shows like WandaVision and stuff like that, it's going to be like, oh yeah, I love the Marvel Universe. Let's do this.
Yeah, I hope so. I'm really excited. So super cool. So thank you so much for joining us, Kat. Final thoughts, anything you'd like to say? And once again, plug your stuff, please.
Yeah. Well, again, definitely go check out Like Father, Like Daughter. Every dollar is appreciated. We only have until Wednesday at 11 a.m. If you enjoyed any of these conversations, I think you'll enjoy the comic. And yeah, this is such a blast. I really would love to be on again.
Absolutely. We will have you on again, 100%. So thank you so much. Thank you, PCP Army, for joining us. We are dipping out. No movie review tomorrow night. Don't worry. We are returning next week with our Christmas reviews. And we're going horror this year. So we're doing Black Christmas next Friday night. But don't forget Rockin Robbie Live on Sunday night at 7 p.m. Central Time. And then, of course, the weekly pop culture wrap-up will be going because I will be talking very heavily about this Warner Brothers HBO Max news and all of that stuff. So thank you so much on behalf of everybody. Thanks for rocking with this station. Y'all have a good one. Keep it real. Keep reading.